Good morning, everybody, and good news, everyone. We have just found out that as of next Sunday, that would be January 31st, 2021, the Christabelle Spiritualist Church is allowed to be open for in-person church services again. Now, we are limited to 25 people, but that's still better than not having anyone here in this chapel. So please, feel free to let us know in advance that you are coming. We don't want to have to turn anyone away at the door. So if you can let us know in advance that you're coming next Sunday, we will be still enforcing social distancing. We will have everyone sitting every other pew. We do ask that masks please be worn, that you allow your temperature to be checked at the door, that we'll have hand sanitizer, and that everything will be nice and clean for you. So we are always looking out for your safety first. But just know, if you are in the greater Rockford, Cherry Valley, Belvedere Metroplex, that you can come and visit us in person next Sunday. We would love to see you here. I cannot wait to be standing in front of all of you again. As you can tell, I love being up here on the platform, and I love doing what I can to try and spread the light of spiritualist joy. So please let us see you next Sunday. And for those of you who are not anywhere geographically near us, who are afraid that we might stop doing our virtual sermons, have no fear. We will still record our sermons and probably the entire church service for all of you. So you'll be able to see the entire church service. And then later on Sunday evening, it will get uploaded to YouTube. So please feel free to hit that bell, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, and you'll always know when a new sermon and a new church service is available. Now, allow me to please begin what will hopefully be our final virtual service ever, so that we can begin to also be in person again. Now, if you would please, bow your heads in a virtual fashion, and we will begin. Great Spirit, as spiritualists, we gather here this day to renew our declaration to the principles upon which the religion of spiritualism was founded. We pray that the spirit of tranquility descend upon this congregation, and that it will flow to our absent members and to all in need of prayer. We warmly welcome and give thanks for the presence of our spirit family, friends, guides, and teachers. We give thanks for their closeness and desire to demonstrate the continuity of life and love. Amen. And now, on to our Declaration of Principles. We believe in infinite intelligence. We believe that the phenomena of nature, both physical and spiritual, are the expression of infinite intelligence. We affirm that a correct understanding of such expression and living in accordance therewith constitute true religion. We affirm that the existence and personal identity of the individual continue after the change called death. We affirm that communication with the so-called dead is a fact scientifically proven by the phenomena of spiritualism. We believe that the highest morality is contained in the Golden Rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Always good advice. We affirm the moral responsibility of the individual, and that we make our own happiness or unhappiness as we obey or disobey nature's physical and spiritual laws. We affirm that the doorway to reformation is never closed against any soul here or hereafter. And finally, we affirm that the precepts of prophecy and healing are divine attributes proven through mediumship. And I cannot wait until next week when we get to do that all over again. Now, allow me to begin officially my sermon for today. Happy Founders Day, everyone. It is so great to see you all out there virtually for our Founders Day celebration. As I am sure that you are aware, we here at the Christabelle Spiritualist Church, we do take Founders Day quite seriously. After all, it is an important holiday in the science, philosophy, and religion of spiritualism. I'm seeing a few puzzled looks out there. So am I to believe that not everyone watching this sermon is familiar with Founders Day? Really? Have you never heard of Founders Day? Have you ever heard the Founders Day story? No? A few of you, but not many of you. Okay. Well, in that case, all you wonderful people out there in virtual congregation land, take up a seat close to the warm glow of your screens, and let dear old student Pastor Mark here enlighten you all with the tale of Founders Day. Where do I want to begin? Where to begin? You know, I guess we should start at the very beginning, right? I mean, that is a very good place to start, at least so I've been told. How many of you, dear virtual congregation members, are familiar with the name Andrew Jackson Davis? Well, he did not really consider himself to be officially a spiritualist. The science, philosophy, and religion of spiritualism would likely not exist without the foundation that was first laid down by Mr. A.J. Davis. I'm sure some of you out there are looking at me kind of cross-eyed right now, and you may find that to be a bit of a controversial or inflammatory statement, but hear me out for just a moment, okay? I completely agree with you that the Fox sisters made an absolutely indelible mark on spiritualism and on the spiritualist movement by bringing spirit communication or mediumship, if you will, to the masses, you know, out of the seance room and out to the world. However, they get their own holiday at the end of March. As such, today is all about Mr. Andrew Jackson Davis and the founding of the first Children's Lyceum in New York City. Tomorrow actually marks the 158th anniversary of that event. Feels like it was just yesterday, doesn't it? It really is a truly momentous occasion. It really is a very momentous moment in what has evolved into the science, philosophy, and religion of spiritualism. Just a second. Some of those puzzled looks that I spoke about earlier are back. Oh, yeah, you know what? I suppose I should explain who A.J. Davis is and why we should care about something called the first Children's Lyceum. Yeah, thank you, Crystal. You know, I'd forgotten that not everyone has devoted their life to spiritualism in the way that I have. Okay, first, here is why we should care about who A.J. Davis is. We'll tackle the Lyceum question in just a moment. First, Mr. Andrew Jackson Davis, or as I've been affectionately referring to him as AJ, was born in 1826 in Blooming Grove, New York. It was Davis's guide, Galen, who is the origin of one of the most often quoted pieces of advice in all of spiritualism. A phrase that I think is probably spoken at least once every week in every spiritualist church around the nation. In all things, keep an even mind. Galen, who was a Greek physician when he was alive, physically alive, and Emanuel Swedenborg were Davis's principal guides. If you're not aware of who Emanuel Swedenborg is, take a look back to our church's Planting Seeds sermon. Swedenborg himself is actually a fascinating individual who just happens to be one of the forerunners of modern spiritualism in his own right. Davis himself actually is referred to by many as the Poughkeepsie seer for all of his prophecies, but quite appropriately, he is also referred to as the father of modern spiritualism. Growing up, he was described to be rather stubborn, awkward, and a clumsy child who was very sensitive to the vibrations of spirit. No wonder I feel like he's a kindred spirit. He grew up having many, many different spiritual experiences, including a vision that actually occurred when his mother transitioned to spirit. Throughout his young adulthood, Davis continued to have all these grand spiritual experiences that culminated in his being mesmerized, or as what we would call today, hypnotized. It was through this hypnotic state, in which he later learned to enter on his own, that Davis would have many experiences that he would write about extensively. Now, one of those experiences that Davis wrote about is actually the reason that I am standing here today talking to you about what an incredible individual he is. Along with Mrs. Lenora Piper and Dr. William James, Andrew Jackson Davis has been one of my personal heroes from the time before I even knew what spiritualism was. I grew up reading books on spirituality, anything I could find about spiritual phenomena, trying to understand and make sense of who I was and why I felt so different from everyone around me. Having read a biography of A.J. Davis when I was a kid, he helped me to recognize that there were others out there who were weird in the same way as I was. His experiences were actually a great comfort to me, especially since I could relate to what he wrote about, including the reason behind today's sermon. Oh yeah. There it is at last. We finally get to the true subject of our sermon today, Founders Day. During one of Davis's spirit journeys, or what I like to call soul travels, he was introduced to what today we might think of as being a class or a school of children in spirit. He saw an assembly of children who appeared to be about the same age, and they were all working in groups and studying lessons on different natural sciences. I have to pause here for just a moment, and I have to ask all of you out there in virtual congregation land if anyone else has experienced something like this. If so, please feel free to comment below, because I would love to hear your experiences on it. The reason that I ask about that is because from the time that I was actually just a wee baby medium, I have experienced things very similar to what A.J. Davis has written about in such detail. I saw schools, and I still do, in which people in spirit would learn and grow. I was also fascinated when I was growing up by what I always tried to tell myself were dreams. I would enter a phenomenally large school in Summerland. And yes, even before I knew what spiritualism was, I knew what Summerland was. And I would enter this phenomenally large school with other people who I knew were still physically alive. And I would sit down in my, quote, desk, and I would remember nothing that transpired. It would just be black. Until I woke up, so to speak, and was getting up from my desk, and then I headed out towards what I always saw as being like a giant hole or a giant vortex in a field next to the city that we had school in. So imagine sitting down, being unable to remember anything, just having like a blank screen in front of your mind, and then standing up and remembering the entire trip back home, all while knowing intuitively that you were not on Earth when all of this was happening. Now, I have since learned the reason as to why I was not allowed to consciously remember my lessons there. It was because those lessons that I learned in that time, they weren't really meant to be remembered until I needed them later on in life. If I had remembered them immediately, they would have been a very big distraction to me. So also, if anyone ever tells you that, one, you cannot go to Summerland while you are still physically inhabiting this form, and two, if they ever try and tell you that you do not learn, grow, and evolve while you are visiting there, let me be the first to tell you that they are wrong. Don't believe me? Check it out for yourself. And this actually also brings me to one of the soul skills that Davis was exceptionally adept at. That is the skill of soul traveling, or what some people would call astral projection. It was actually during the first of such astral travels that Davis reported that he was, and I quote, born again into spirit. And I love the way he phrased that. I really do. Well, in this astral state, he witnessed auras as well as the disappearance of walls, among other things. He experienced several different types of phenomena. If you have never soul traveled, I highly recommend it. There is, quite honestly, no other sensation to compare it to here on earth. The joy, the freedom, the connection to all that is, was, and ever will be is something that can best be described, and this is falling completely short, but it can be best described as just pure joy, just pure freedom. If you aren't aware of how to soul travel or astral project, if you will, it is a skill that is not only reserved for those who are exceptionally evolved, such as A.J. Davis. Anyone can learn this wonderful skill. No, seriously. If I can do it, anyone can do it. So anyway, back to A.J. and the Children's Lyceum that he saw in spirit. After all, I did promise that we would get back to this for all of us, didn't I? Okay, so in the context of spiritualism and Summerland, a lyceum is essentially a school. I know that after everything I've already spoke about during this sermon, that it is quite a shocking revelation to hear that, right? Let me explain just a bit further, though. The lyceum that Davis saw while in Summerland was more than just a place where children were taught through rote memorization. It was a place where they were and are taught to think and experience for themselves, a place of true higher learning. After seeing this lyceum in Summerland, Davis actually decided to try and recreate his vision here on Earth. As such, he founded the first children's lyceum that I had spoken about at the very beginning of the sermon. This is actually a very unique way of looking at schooling. As I said earlier, this method of learning had more to do with teaching children how to think for themselves and to be more what I always refer to as internally motivated instead of externally directed. Unfortunately, Davis's health issues meant that he was going to have to leave the lyceum that he founded and that loved so much. He was succeeded by several well-meaning people over the years who would evolve and work to improve his lyceum curriculum. Sadly for Davis, in time, his first children's lyceum, it was shut down in favor of just ordinary Sunday school. And this truly did grieve him because his intention for the lyceum was to develop good thinkers as well as wholesome, harmonious people. Now, even though his first children's lyceum did not have the long and productive life that he would have really hoped for, it did last a while. It wasn't like it lasted 2 years and then shut down. It did help to inspire other people. His divinely inspired concepts of schooling, it really did evolve into other things. Just out of curiosity, how many of you out there are familiar with the name Maria Montessori? Not many, but I think you know where I'm going with this. How many of you have heard of Montessori schools? Can I get a show of hands? Whoop, almost burned my can. Show of hands there. Okay. So most of you know what a Montessori school is. Now, in quite a few ways, actually, the template that Andrew Jackson Davis started all those years ago has developed into what became the Montessori style of education. If you look it up, it's actually quite similar. Now, also, don't forget the fact that in spiritualist churches around the country, we have not only children's lyceum programs, but also adult lyceum as well. So, stay tuned. Honestly, stay tuned for news of Christabelle starting our very own NSAC-approved lyceum program in the very near future. I'm really thinking of getting everything organized in February so we can start it in March. Much like the spirit of Davis's first children's lyceum, our current pre-church lyceum programs do more than just help you learn the Declaration of Principles. They're also lessons on life as well as parables designed to help each of us become the best person we can possibly be. And there is also the learning more about spiritualism, spiritualist nature, more about natural law, more about all of how the universe works. So Lyceum is a wonderful thing, but my point is this. Mr. Andrew Jackson Davis continues to guide and lead not only our Lyceums by his wonderful example, his words and his deeds still echo forward for all of us today. He gave some of the most outstanding descriptions of Summerland and the activities that those in spirit engage in there. He authored many books, and he lectured. He started the first children's lyceum. And as time went on, he began to unfold spiritualism into his own personal belief system, which he called the harmonial philosophy. Without Andrew Jackson Davis embracing who he was and being open and honest about what he saw in spirit, we would not have the wonderful system of spiritualist learning that we have today. I stand before you on the eve of the 158th anniversary of the founding of the first Children's Lyceum to offer my gratitude quite sincerely to Mr. Andrew Jackson Davis, and indeed to all those who have come before us who were instrumental in guiding each of us to the light of spiritualist truth. Until next time, I am your student pastor, Mark Dorset, and this is the Christabelle Spiritualist Church. Come grow with us. Thank you.